Hello, everybody. I'm not sure yet if I can hear you because the step I forgot is to load my web page, but give me just a second. Hopefully everything looks and sounds okay. Might be a little darker than usual in this view, but I don't think it affects the other view. And I'll explain why momentarily. Of course, I have to go through the whole login process, and even with the double verification, because the most secure things I have are like Twitch and some other thing that doesn't need to be secure. Or that secure. I'm not saying my Twitch shouldn't be secure. There we go. My verification code is very small. Nope, hold on. Apologies for not a very smooth start. Okay, I think I see us. It looks like we have some people. Wow, it looks like we have a good number of people. I think. I don't know. It's hard to tell between the end of the chat from Anne's show and mine. I'm going to just pop out chat because I made it nice and big, which does not seem to have retained this setting, of course. Of course, the day that I forgot about doing this. Chat appearance. Make the letters for old people. All right. I think that is good, and I can see you now. Crows and Bones. Quindy's here. Beards and Battle Axes. Looks like green users are here. Reaper Miniatures, which I'm going to assume is John at the wheel. All right. Knock a Flock of Flame, I think, is here. Looking at the date stamps, which I'm not always the best at. I'm doing okay, Beards and Battle Axes. I hope everyone else is doing well. Happy New Year. Congratulations to all the introverts who made it through the holiday season. Not always easy. All right. I think everything I want to talk about will be better on the other view. So let's switch over, and I will get more light. So I had a lighting crisis last night, and my room lights are a little different than usual, and I do not like them. It's dimmer and more yellow, and it turns out I like a very blue light, I guess. I don't know. But it is temporary. We're working on a replacement. So, see, we don't need that. But previously, so last year, it's been like a whole year since I talked to you guys. I mean, it does feel like a minute because all the holidays were on Monday, so I haven't been here for a minute. But the last time I was here, I was working on enhancing this Hallmark ornament. So some of the enhancements are just washes, and some areas I repainted a little. And after my tests, I was very surprised to discover that the Hallmark ornaments I tested on took paint just fine. So if you've ever had the urge to enhance something, you might want to watch that video, which I think is still on Twitch. I'm not sure. Quindy, last time I looked, the Reaper YouTube channel had not been updated with some of the videos from last year, but which I'm sure you're very busy. I'm not criticizing. I'm just checking whether to send people over there or not. Eventually you can go there and watch this video, but for now it is still on Twitch. I finished the stomach and a few other things after the video because, once I'd started, I had to get it finished to put up on my Christmas tree. And then another recent one that was like kind of holidays, kind of not, was painting just this side. I'm going to paint this side. I'm going to paint this side eventually. Of the donkey from Reaper's nativity scene, which you can also use as just a donkey. And there is a pack-laden version for adventurers. And I painted the original pictures that are in the Reaper store, and I wanted to, that was some years ago, I don't know, depends on your frame of reference for time. But I wanted to see if I could do something that was both a little more naturalistic and visually interesting, and also not as, like, a little easier to paint, a little less stress and insanity than how I used to paint. Oh, we're getting a new playlist for everything to make it more organized on the YouTube. Oh, and Babatoop4 says Twitch archives last for 2 to 3 months. Oh, okay. For some reason, I only thought it was 4 weeks. And Beards and Battle Axes loves this chonky boy, which I love him so much. So I'm not sure if it's still going on. It was as of a few days ago, but Hallmark.com has put, so there's a big version of this guy too. And they put a lot of their Christmas ornaments on 50% off, and the big version of Timber Chode was on there. It's possible that I've purchased like 4 or 5 big versions of Timber Chode and given some to my friends because I'm the Oprah Winfrey of Timber Chode. You get a Timber Chode. You get a Timber Chode. But it's only like $13 now, so well worth it. And he lights up. And I'm going. One reason I bought an extra was because I'm going to paint that one as well. And just for my desk, since there's, it's not like they stuck a wreath on his neck or there's anything else inherently Christmassy about him. Before I switch over to, like, just painting, no, that's the wrong one. I want to just, I've had a couple discoveries about my wet palette sponge specifically. So I want to start talking about that because most companies that are selling these supplies for miniature painters specifically, they've gone to these, hydration membranes or whatever we're calling them now, where the old Stay Wet palette had more of a sponge. It was thin, it was a compressed sponge, but it still had a little bit of like spongy type texture, and this is more of a smooth, not sponge, but it does the job very well. But where I was running into some problems is, in between painting sessions, I like to, in a theoretical world at least, I like to squeeze out my sponge of the water and let everything dry out to minimize the chance of mold. Do I remember to do this all the time? No, definitely not. But I did remember to do it after I last painted on the show. And I learned a couple of things because I had been kind of gently rolling them up, not wringing them, but squeezing them. And then I saw one of the companies that makes these things posted that wasn't ideal. That wasn't the way to dry them out. And I'm like, okay, great, but what is? And I said something in the comments, and somebody said squeeze it in a towel, and that worked really well. So I have some utility towels, which I actually recommend having. We got them when we got a rug cleaner, and they said get white towels so that if the rug is still wet and you need to walk around, you put the white towels down and no dye is going to come off and affect the color of your carpet. And I'm like, okay, that's a smart idea. But we've used these things for so many things since then. Spills, it's just very handy to have. So now I have a towel I can use for squeezing out my thing. But then the second thing is after I squeezed it out and I put it somewhere to dry, I get so much dust and lint. Since we got rid of those carpets, we don't have the carpet cleaner anymore either, because we redid everything as flat floor, which is great in some respects, but it's just so much dust. I was not prepared. And I left it out for like 3 weeks since there were no Monday shows. And I could even see without looking at it, like with my painting glasses or anything, that there was stuff on there, little pieces of fibers and stuff like that. So I tried blowing it off with my air spritzer, and that didn't work. But then I remembered that sometimes I get lint off with like packing tape. And what's on here is all what was just on my sponge from being left out right now. So it was a decent amount of fibers, and now they're not floating in the water, potentially getting in my paint. So if you have had problems with these sponges, those are some tips that I have discovered. All right. So what do I want to paint today? I was trying to think of things to do for the next year. Oh, Quindy's pointing out that the amount of time archives are on Twitch is shorter for channels that are not partnered versus those that are. So I'm thinking of the not partnered timeline, I think. And I believe Reaper is a partner. So they get the nice longer time. And what I thought I wanted to paint today was color. I'm still very open to suggestions for things you all would like to see. In lieu of that, I think I'm still gonna be doing some experimenting stuff, but I might actually try to finish some miniatures now and then. Because it's just very unsatisfying to paint like half a miniature sometimes. All right, so I have the Dire Cabbage, which I have alas discovered is not on the store at this time. But anyone who is in Bones 5 probably got this guy. And there's like carnivorous plants and a lot of different monsters that what I'm going to do could apply to. So this is the guy I'm using, but if you don't have this guy, you can still do the kind of thing I'm going to talk about, which is goofing around with weird colors. Actually, let me find my reference pictures. Green user said I pledged to have more veggies for the new year, and that's the way I'm doing it. Yes and yes. I mean, he's just fun, but I'm kind of, I like decorative cabbage. I don't know why. I'm kind of like fascinated by the concept that this thing that we eat and a lot of people think is super boring is also can be very pretty. So there's just all these wild varieties. And a lot of them have this kind of thing where there's green and there's purple and sometimes that creamy color. Even these ones that are mostly green, you can still kind of see like a purple haze because there's like some deep parts that are purple. And I don't know. Those colors do work well in common. I don't even know if this is a real one. I think the guy overexposed this picture, but I'm keeping this for another color scheme idea. When you see cool pictures that have colors you like, that is a good thing to do is, take a picture of it, have a folder somewhere. This one, I'm not doing the colors of this one this time, but I realized I have a second Dire Cabbage, so another time I might do that. So this one's more of a blue-green and orange, which is a very effective combination. So that's a color complement. And the purple and green isn't quite, but this is the one I decided I like the best. This turns out to be less purple than I thought. Even these reddish purples, like Witchcraft Purple, I don't know. It's like purpley red, and I don't know how much I'm going to obsess with making that exact color because that's not always what's useful to do in painting. And I also don't want to make you guys watch that. But I did bring some other colors to kind of play with, and then I've got some greens. It turned out that the greens I liked, that I thought were closest were both Pathfinder greens. So this is Alchemical. If you haven't looked at the Pathfinder paint line, there's some really cool colors in there. I mean, cool as in fun, not cool as in cool temperature. And then this is not even yellow. It's kind of a cream. Like even this yellow mold is close, but not quite. It's probably closer to here's another Pathfinder color and one I love for making my own highlights. Osirian Sand. And that's probably pretty close. But it's a miniature. I'm going to have to go darker and I may have to go more saturated. So I just popped a few other things in there. And I also have the clears over here. So I'm going to goof around with color a little bit because that reddish purple and the green are pretty close to color complements. And depending on which ones you have, you're going to get some neat things with mixing those together. You're going to get neat neutrals. So this is probably going to work better. This is clear phthalo green. It was a promo color, but I'm also going to play around with the regular clear green that you can get all the time. And what was it? I got Elven green as my darker one that might work a little better. Let's see. Crows and Bones. I love cabbage, but maybe that's the Irish part of my DNA. I love cabbage too, but I know I have some friends who are like, oh, cabbage, how boring. My husband is like that. And I'm like, I don't know. You get a lot of vegetable. It's convenient. It's tasty. Daka Flocka Flame. My family has a plant nursery as a business, and we've sold a lot of decorative cabbage and kale. They can be really pretty. And if I am recalling correctly, cabbage, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprout, like all of those things are really from the same original plant that people have over time bred to be all these different kinds. So we as a species are kind of obsessed with cabbage, I guess, regardless of what individuals might think of them. So that's the Witchcraft Purple. Put some of that out. This is, I meant to actually get the Violet Red out too, but for some reason I didn't. There's not a true magenta in the main Reaper paint lines, but you got the clear magenta. If you need it. Well, now let's put out some greens. Put that Elven green. Maybe. White cabbage in the form of coleslaw is especially boring. Sad dish. Well, Pendrick, there's different coleslaws. I mean, there's like the vinegar-based ones, mayonnaise-based ones. I don't mind some coleslaw now and then. I mean, I don't like live for it or anything. Well, that's true. I didn't put out any purples. So I've got Carnival Purple and Clear Purple, which are similar enough that I'm just going to put the Clear Purple back over there. Wow, none of my paints want to cooperate today. Those pictures I showed you were all from Unsplash. I'm sure that I do have decorative cabbage pictures on my phone because, as I say, I do kind of enjoy decorative cabbage for some reason. Dr. Flecka Flame says apple slaw is the best slaw. So that's the clear green that's always available. This one was the promo color. And I'll put out some of these lighter greens too. With the lighter colors like this one and this one, we're going to start having colors that have other pigments mixed in. So they may not do what I'm talking about as reliably. But they're still going to do something when you mix them together. And we'll find out. We'll find out that I did not grab brushes today. I'm just going to put that over there for now because I'm sure I'll need it again. All right, so let's do like the really classic, which is like True Magenta. And that's the one I said was the like Viridian style phthalo. And you get this like super cool gray. Okay, well, all right, that's purpley. Sometimes you have to play around with the ratios. But it's like a nice way to kind of gray out either of those colors. Like if I decide any of these are too bright, black may not be the correct answer. The correct answer may be, you know, the color complement or something in that family. So no, none of these are like gray in the sense of what you're going to get out of a bottle, but that's what makes them interesting. And you can see that happening even on the cabbage where kind of those spots meet. You get some of these kinds of colors. So where like the pinky parts are close to the green parts. And that's kind of the haze. When I was showing the field of cabbage is kind of like that color, I think. But let's try with a lighter color and see what happens. So there's like a true green. And we'll do one of the mixed magentas instead. And it is muddier and browner because, like I said, there's other colors mixed in. Which is still, I mean, this is a very cabbage leaf color. Still. Or if you need a travel set of paints or you only have bright colored greens, but you want to paint something like natural vegetation or some gross slime monster or something. There's how you turn your brighter greens into less pretty greens. What happens if we do it with the lightest colors that have a bunch of white in? Okay, well, clearly the pink is the more potent color. And it's not always going to be half and half. You're looking for half and half visually, not half and half literal drops of paint, because some colors are just much more potent than others. And that's like almost a skin tone. So that's how you can get skin tones out of, I only have bright colors with me today because I didn't expect to be painting this elf or whatever. Crows and Bones, that clear magenta and clear phthalo green mix is real pretty. Yeah, I kind of got obsessed with this when I was watercolor painting, so I thought it'd be fun to try it on miniatures. But let's try a little bit with the, oh, I didn't try this other green, which I suspect will work well. But you never know until you try it. And it's not quite, it's a closer to a black, actually, which is nice. I did that color and the violet red I forgot. And then like a gold color for a limited palette challenge for Reaper. The online expo. Now I'm forgetting what it is. Reaper Virtual Expo. So that's like a really nice neutral color too. Am I going to be able to use all these colors together? That is a different question. But now let's try purple and green, because that can be quite nice too. So that's Carnival Purple. And I love the colors you can get with that combo too. So purple is just kind of magic, and that'll work for the shadows of a lot of things. That was the clear phthalo green, but let's try clear regular green. You get like a nice foresty green, which actually that is a color that was in the cabbage, I think. So that I don't drive myself nuts and make it boring for you, I'm not going to put my reference picture off to the side and obsessively check it. I mean, I might, because I'm not going to obsessively check it, but more for like where's the placement of these various colors on the cabbage, because that was part of what I thought was interesting too. So yes, and this is the kind of thing you can do after you finish a painting session and you have paint left on your palette. Just grab a piece of paper and goof around a little and see, you know, things that you might think are too crazy that you've never tried on a miniature. You can do it that way. You're not wasting paint and you're still learning. I think it's fine to waste paint. I think the learning experience is worth doing stuff like just putting out some drops like that and goofing around, but I know that not everyone feels comfortable with that. So let me get my little cabbage back so I can see where the things are. Because it's like it's dark in the center and it's got the spines and then the green is on the outside. It's an interesting idea. Will I be able to do that? What an excellent question. Let's see. Dakaflaka Flame says apple slaw is the best slaw. Pendrake, is that another way of saying applesauce? It's shredded apples in addition to or instead of cabbage, which does sound delicious. Dakaflaka Flame is also bummed that clear phthalo green is not a regular color that's normally available. Agreed. It's pretty close to Viridian, which is when I was using watercolor, it was the Viridian plus magenta that I would use, and that made the pretty, like this color doesn't even have a word type color. I mean, okay, it probably does, because I'm sure that Pantone. And has everyone seen Pantone's color of the year? Because, what Pantone? Just, you know, what back in the day they would have called flesh in, like, crayons or something. It's not awesome. I'm very confused why they picked such a... It's like this, it's a skin tone. I mean, it's not, I don't think I have one that's peachy enough. If you look at the peachier Reaper skin tones, it's like one of those. It's just, We almost painted our basement walls, something like that, and then our friends made a joke about how they would think of a certain part of anatomy every time they looked at our walls, and then I painted them like this color instead. Because that is not what I wanted. I think we'll start with the Pendrit. Yeah, Pantone picks a color of the year every year. I think last year was like a bright, Barbie pink type color. I don't know if there was one year they had two colors, so it's been like 24 years that they've been doing this, but there have been 26 colors, I think. So I don't know if Queenie can find a link on the web to share of some article that has the Pantone color of the year, but it was kind of like, please explain yourself, Pantone. Because I haven't found an article that does that yet. It's like, what? Why? This color? This year is called Peach Fuzz. Yeah. And I don't even know that I think it looks like Peach Fuzz. It looks like, orangey Caucasian skin tone. Which is not what I would have picked if I was in the conference room at Pantone and they were just got like, they've only had 25 or 26 colors. Like, I don't think we're down to Caucasian peach skin tone. There must surely be more interesting colors than that. I'm just going to put a bunch of paint out in wet blend, I think. That's why I'm... Should be just on the Pantone official site. That is probably true. Oops. Well, I could rescue that. I could pop this off and put the paint back in there. I think I've shown that before, and I'm going to spare you guys the agony of watching me do that. Unless someone in the audience is now being tortured by my paint wastefulness. Which, as I said, I kind of endorse wasting paint. So this pinky purple, it's just breaking my brain a little, whatever this color is. So I'm going to put out some Blue 985. That's why I refuse to acknowledge any color other than magenta. Well, there are lots of other colors, but there are not colors that we like. There were so many better options. I just don't know. I don't know what was going on at the deciding table at Pantone. All right, I promise you guys I wouldn't obsess about this color that I was looking through my bottles, but in my weird new light situation that's temporary. In a couple of days, I should hopefully get lights that I don't hate. But I guess we'll see. Oh, you know what's not here? The most important color. Although I will try to use my little mixes instead of blue liner. Blue liner that I thought I shook and I didn't shake enough. Because where's that paper? I tried to put it somewhere safe because I think we all know that otherwise I will put my arm or a miniature or something else in it. So let's compare kind of like my favorite. I use this as in lieu of black. And it's more interesting than black, but is it as interesting as one of these? No, maybe not. But I'm lazy and I don't always want to mix. Babatuk, subtly sensual is not what I would use to describe that Pantone color of the year. No, I agree. Blue 985. I suppose the reality is that those colors are being viewed through perspective beyond miniatures, and terms like subtly sensual would be applied to things like furniture and general design. Which, true. I think that the Pantone colors are a lot more for that and printing and stuff. But at the same time, I don't feel like subtly sensual applies to that color in any context. All right, I'm trying to make a color that I'm going to put into the shadow places that's like kind of like this color. Get some of that green. Really, I want that clear phthalo, but I'm not going to torture people with things they can't have right now. Pendrape, batteries hit 1%, Dyson logos killed it with all the techno rock paneling before it dies. Well, we'll see you another time, Pendrape. Thanks for sticking with us until that final 1%. It's going to take me 2 coats at least, all of these colors, well, except the ones that have more white in them, are on the transparent side. So that's kind of the downside of radiant and magenta and all those things I was loving on. And in general, I think that wet blending takes a couple of coats. So you either need to do like an all over color, or you need to accept that you're going to be doing the blending steps twice at least, if you want to get like full coverage and non-streakiness. That's just how paint do. So this coat I make, I'm probably not even going to actually blend. I'm just going to figure out where I'm putting the colors. And then I'll have that as a guideline. I'm going to try to do something more interesting with his mouth. I'll probably leave that for later. For when I do the wet blending part. So this is kind of drawing myself a roadmap. Which is what a lot of, pre-painting, if you see people, I feel like the tail might need to be a slightly different color as well, but we'll put the shadow color in. If you see people doing things like, even zenithal priming is a method of kind of like pre-shading and stuff. Oh, that's the blue line. That's often what they're doing. They're drawing themselves a roadmap of one kind or another. That's the wrong purple. That's royal purple. Not that it's terrible. We'll leave it there. They're drawing themselves a roadmap for value with stuff like zenithal. Obviously you can use that as a cheat code to, then you just put transparent colors over inks, or all the paints the kids are loving these days, and that kind of thing. But some people also paint completely over zenithal, and they're just kind of using it as a reference point. Let's see. Blue 985. How long do I usually spend cleaning up the models before painting? I love the Reaper miniatures for style, but there's always a lot of cleaning. It depends on what the purpose of what I'm painting is. I did not actually spend any time cleaning this guy. I might have, I think I scraped off there and that other place where you saw some white. So I'll do some scraping, particularly the new materials. So the Bones USA, and then the ones that are 3D printed, those are much easier to clean because I can scrape with an X-Acto blade, and I find scraping a preferred method of cleaning for me. I can clean, a classic Bones or black Bones. That's that more flexible plastic. But whether I'm going to do it depends on what is the function of the miniature. Is the miniature, something I'm just doing a quick demo like this on, that I'm doing a quick practice on. Like sometimes if I don't know the color schemes I want to use on something I'm painting, I'll grab a miniature that has elements in common with that, like the same kind of cloak folds or whatever other element would be in common. And I'll just do like a quick test on that. And I'm not going to put a lot of effort into prepping those. If I'm painting something that's for a game and it's like, it's not my character, it's something that people are going to hit and is going to die, or it's a townsperson they're going to meet once, I'm not going to go nuts prepping that either. And I'm someone who's fairly into prep, but it was almost freeing to have the option to say, no, I don't care about that. But if I'm gonna spend a lot of time painting something, absolutely I'm gonna start taking some time and prep it. And probably, like a metal or resin or Bones USA miniature that I'm gonna take some time painting, it can be up to an hour of prep. The one step I always do, and I did with this guy, is I drop them in an isopropyl alcohol bath so that I'm getting off, finger grease from me handling it or the people who packaged it or mold release on a metal miniature. So that step I always like to do. Do I like my roadmap? I don't know. Maybe we want more of a greener thing for these parts, since the spines, the veins and stuff will be. So if you actually wanted like cabbages, there's the store called Scenic. Oh no, feel free, Blue Nine. Sometimes the chat is very quiet, and I would rather have people like asking questions if they have them and stuff than feeling like I need to sit quietly. Most of the people here have probably heard me drone on about the same things that are left to my imagination. Which I think I did have a few more things about color, but I will save those for when paint is drying or something. Yes, I've noticed that on the new models, the old ones kind of crumbled and couldn't scrape so well. So what works better on the bendier plastic is paring. So like how you would use a knife to pare a carrot or a potato. You kind of just want to get just under the mold line and then you cut it. You need a very sharp blade. Like for X-Acto blades, 2 miniatures is enough to dull it out for me to where that's not as feasible. So I got scalpel blades and those go longer. So where I keep kind of pausing and getting stuck is that there are spots where the leaves are going under and spots where the joins are. And those are going to be like 2 different colors probably. I don't know yet. That color is very bright. It is what's in my photo cabbage, but it may not be realistic to do in a miniature. Like it might just have to be the highlights. Sometimes you gotta pump up the volume in the sense of the saturation, or you have to make something darker in value than it really looks like in real life or in your photo, because you've got to have room to go lighter in highlights. And between this and white there is not a huge difference. If I start going down here a little, I get more difference. And this green seems kind of intense, so we're probably gonna fix it. I mean, there is yellowiness, I think, and I can kind of like, maybe I want him to be brighter, because that also, brighter colors also kind of say toxic to us, because so many plants with bright colors are toxic, and so they use the color to advertise their not tastiness. So if I'm wanting him to be like a scary dire cabbage who's, coming for you, I might want to make the colors brighter on that front as well. And you can use a file, so like a diamond file, not a cross hatched file, or sanding sticks or other things with fine grit sandpaper on the softer plastic miniatures. You go in one direction and you use a very light hand. Like I always say, like imagine you're filing a baby. So don't file a baby. But if you imagine the kind of light pressure you would use to file on a baby's skin, that's how light you want to be. So files totally work. You'll get a few what I call gribblies, but that's why you go in one direction, and then when you have some gribblies, you go even lighter in the opposite direction, and they should come off. Oh, I forgot his kind of side cabbage, which is a smaller area, so it's going to be more challenging to do the color transition. So you can see that there is some paint kind of beating up and pulling back from the surface. That's the other reason that I'm going to do something like this in 2 coats. I mean, I'm going to have to do it for coverage anyway, because if I put one of these pink colors on, you're going to see that a lot of gray still under there. I'm going to need more than 1 coat to make it really that color. But also where you have that slight hydrophobic quality, first of all, there's no water in any of this paint, which I wouldn't be adding water to the paint regardless of the surface of the miniature, because this is kind of how I paint now. But even if you typically thin paint down, you just need it to be thin enough that you're not adding texture. So not adding, if a surface is hydrophobic, not adding the hydro to it is going to help you out. It may be that I end up putting some of these magentas in more with glazes. I don't know yet. I did not massively plan this out clearly. And then the edges are where the darker paint is. It's not quite that dark though. And that may be like a later step too. I just kind of thought I would get a little bit of an idea of what it's going to look like. So in this case, I was talking about a road map before. I'm trying to map my overall color shifts in the values, but not the shadows and highlights. So where usually you would do something like zenithal or painting grayscale by hand, because I've done kind of what people do with zenithal, but by hand a lot, so that I'm making more deliberate choices. That is road mapping value. This is more road mapping hue or color. So I'm still going to have to work out all right, this is an area that's rolling away from the light. It should be darker there. But since that funky color transitions, for anyone who came in late, I'm using this picture of a decorative cabbage from Unsplash as my inspiration. So where the colors shift is kind of the big story. I don't know. It's a little more, not something the way I would normally paint something. So doing a road map and planning out where to put what, I'm learning that maybe I need more of that pink. I don't know. I think I'm learning something. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm learning something. Maybe I do need to go a little lighter and yellower in those center parts. But you don't always have to look at, oh, I'm going to have to paint 2 coats of paint. What a pain in the butt, time wasting exercise. It can be useful as well. So I do think that one thing I've learned is that these greens out of the bottle are are very intense. And if I want to have some more of that pinky feel, I might need to add some of those colors like I was doing on paper before we start. Or I can decide that just having them via the veins, painting these veins later with those colors, is a good answer. Both of those are valid answers. Just have to decide what I personally would enjoy. But now I'm mostly just looking for places where I still see gray, because I do want to have all the surface coated so that my next coat of paint, where I am being more deliberate about where stuff goes, I'm not going to get any of that beading. So once you get one coat on there, which can be primer or whatever thing, just not spray primer, then you're fine. You can start thinning down your paint or doing glazes and washes and all that good stuff. You just need to have a surface down for that to happen. I still need to figure out what am I gonna do with like these. I think I want the stem to be more the same, and then we'd make that part different. Maybe. See a few little places still with gray. Oh, there's definitely some in there. No, I haven't checked chat in a minute, and I'll do that in just a sec, because if I get all this on here, then I can answer questions while it dries, so that we have something to do while we're watching paint literally dry. Yep, there's the spot that's still gray. And I usually prime in gray, so this is my life even with primer. And I think his giant feet should probably kind of go with the stem. I mean, I'll probably end up making the claws something a bit different so that they stand out and look more vicious. But there will be no harm to getting paint on them now, and some benefit. So I'm not worried about the fact that I'm massively missing spots and getting paint where it will not be that color in the end. And I very much do this painting, you know, on my own, even when I'm not trying to paint a little more quickly for the stream. I'm messy where I can be, and then I start, you know, refining things and doing all the annoying niggly parts. Okay, that looks very bright in comparison. And I probably want to try to keep some of the focus here, although really this, you know, this part is the cabbaginess of the cabbage. So while that is drying, I'm going to try to knock back some of these colors a little, because they're like very cartoony compared to my thing, which again, depending on if, you know, I was trying to make a toxic, vicious looking cabbage, I might want that. But I have this picture that I'm kind of trying to be inspired by. So I'm gonna knock my colors back just a little and put out more, because he turns out to be using a bit more paint than I would on a person type miniature. Decisions of which colors to knock it back with. And then it starts looking dull here, but you know, we've got, this is definitely intense, so I want to deal with it just a little. I want to change this. I don't think this color is too intense. It's just very light. So that's me. I made a dark color. I made like my own shadow color essentially. So if I use that in my color mixes to make shadow colors, that is a way to keep color schemes more uniform. It's kind of unifying your shadows a little bit. Let's see. Babatuk. I struggle with cleanup on Bones USA, so I'm dreading going to Bones Glazing. If you do the paring rather than scraping or the thin foam strips, yeah, buy the pre-cut sticks. I have these, I think they're called sanding needles. And do I ever remember the name of the company? No. But if you type sanding needles, probably in Amazon, or at least in Google, you will find things like this. I believe one of these is medium and one of these is fine. I think the white is the medium and the blue is the fine. And these are what I like for the regular bones. Do I have a guy? Yes, I do. Well, I even have an old school guy, but this one's going to show up better on screen. So let me get the bright cabbage that might confuse the camera out of the view. And I'll show you what I mean about light strokes. So there's a little mold line here. Let's see if I put it that way, if you can see it a bit better. But so it's not like all the mold lines are terrible. Like if I was, you know, there's a little bit on his helmet. That one's a bit bigger. But again, if this is a guy who's going to die in a couple of hits, do I have to take the mold lines off? I mean, he's sort of 4 scale. He's not going to die in a couple of hits. He can go up against anything. But for example purposes. So I'll do this on the helmet. Do I trust myself to do the knife thing? I'm having some wrist issues, so I don't currently trust myself to use very sharp implants. So I'm just very lightly in one direction, and that might be the wrong direction actually. Yeah, I think this direction is going to work better. So instead of going, like if I'm doing a metal miniature, I'm going back and forth. And so you'll get like that. You'll get a little piece like that. You just go the opposite direction and it'll come up. And even if it doesn't look perfect, once you start putting paint on there, you'll think that this surface looks terrible after you do the sanding. But once you start putting paint on, you're like, I rarely see it. But yeah, with metal miniatures, I don't scrape. I use files. But you can do this with diamond files too. Well, okay, fine grit diamond files. I have some diamond files that are like very intense. And I just use them for super big mold lines on metal miniatures. But this is like, so to find this scale, what I found to be the most reliable thing is search for 2 millimeter diameter. And that should get you like this size of file online. Because that's the thing that's hard to find online. Is it 100% reliable? No, but you should find a set like this pretty easily if you do 2mm thing. When I did my sort of test buy, I got a couple of sets that were smaller, which are cool. I use those for a few things. And then I got that one set that was a bit bigger. And they ended up coming in handy for like super bad mold lines, but I rarely use them otherwise. So similar thing, you can use these diamond files. You just have to use a light hand instead of sawing back and forth like you would on a metal miniature. And then to prove my point, I will put a coat of paint on him. Let's say that's a visible color. I mean, I didn't go nuts and like totally fix that. But we'll let that dry and come back and see what the mold on looks like. And then the next time we use this guy as Sir Four Scale, he's going to have a magenta head. But there we are. Have I used the Chimera Thalos? I have them. I haven't used them a lot. Thalo is not my favorite blue. I was very excited when Chimera made genuine ultramarine because that's not as common in miniature paints. And so this magenta green phthalo or phthalo green is a nice combo, but another nice combo I like for doing more natural neutrals and grays and stuff is true ultramarine blue and like burnt and orangey burnt sienna. Chitter Squirrel. The Crusader grunts are so iconic, but I really love the Overlord ones more for style. Definitely going to look up some Sandy Needles now. Pendrake. Maybe that peach fuzz Pantone color is a skin tone in the sense of a preteen kid whose face is only capable of growing peach fuzz. Still, why would they pick that? Why would they pick it? Chitter Squirrel. I used to do a lot of Warlord play, have most of the armies in a good size. So that's not dry. Is this guy dry? He's drier. He's dry enough that we can take some of these knocked down colors and see, kind of compare them. So I'll put the knockdown color on this side, and then it's got the intenser version on the mini cabbage, so we can kind of see the difference. There's the, oh, that's interesting. I don't know if that, and I feel like I put the most stuff in the darkest one, but it doesn't look as knocked down. And now let's try some of this slightly de-intensified cream color. I think I like that. I probably in no way got enough paint out for this big guy, and then wet blending uses a lot more paint too. So hopefully the light looks okay. I had that light bulb crisis, so when my husband got super into the, what do you call them, the smart lights, I guess, a few years back, but when he tried putting them in my room, I was like, those are not bright enough. Thank you. So he found a different kind. They don't change colors or anything, but they were pretty bright. Like I used to call it the surgery in here. Because it's pretty bright. Which my old eyes like. But the problem with that was it had a different app to all the other lights in the house. And that app decided that they were updating, and I had to get the new version. And I'm like, great, whatever. So I downloaded the new version, and it's like, transfer over your previous stuff to to make this app do the same thing your other one did, but it wouldn't let me log into the other app anymore. It would open and then just crash. So I give it to him, and I'm like, fix this. And then I walk in the room, and the lights are just blinking. I'm like, that is very opposite to what I would like to have happen. And he said, I think that you should just buy the lights that we use in the rest of the house. I said, okay. So I have, substitute stuff in right now until those lights come. But the nice thing about that, the way he talked me into it, because I kind of think the whole color shifting light stuff is ridiculous, but was trying it out in another room where we have them, and I'll be able to make the exact white that I want. Like there's like a little color wheel, and you can just move your finger around, and I'm like, okay, I can make them cool, but not too cool. You've talked me into it. Pendrick says the light looks okay to him. I also have a lamp for painting, so I was hoping that it would kind of override the weirdness in the room as a whole. And I believe that it has. And then the nice thing about this being like a textury natural surface is, why would I have to go nuts making like a super smooth thing? I do have to stop touching this because part of it's wet and part of it's dry. So I will have to return to that leaf later, but I don't feel like I have to go totally bananas. This transition is going to be a little trickier because it's smaller. And then I started with the wrong green. Like I probably want to get a different brush for this one. But maybe we can make it work. And then I'm putting my revised color up there a bit. And then this is just the color part, so I can still kind of add some highlights and stuff to places as I feel necessary. But probably once it has dried. But yeah, if you are not super comfortable with wet blending, I absolutely recommend beginning to practice on something like wolf fur or this or some other surface where, it's not a cloak that you want perfectly smooth and refined looking, but where it's natural and it's going to make sense if it has some little streaky bits and parts that aren't perfectly joined. That I never actually put the revised middle color in there. Because yeah, I think knocking those colors back just a little, and it is just a little, like they still, once they're on the miniature, they still seem pretty nice and vibrant. But I think it was a thing I needed to do to be happier with the color choices. And I'm still being tempted to touch places that are wet, which is definitely bad for wet blending. Once things start to dry and it's patchy, well, really any kind of painting, once your surface isn't uniformly wet, like stop touching it, let it dry and fix whatever it is later. Pendrake, I collected Reven, Overlord, and one other. Memory is failing. I was initially very attracted to the Nefsokar, and then I started working on them, and I was like, do I want to work on the mold line? This was before I had come to my mold lines on grunts don't matter philosophy. And I was like, do I want to clean the mold lines off this many bandage wrapped mummies? And my answer was, I very much do not. So I gave up that notion. Babatuk, I was going to get the Chimera expansion as a birthday present for myself, but then I learned that Nordlys, who might be my favorite boutique miniatures company, were closing down, so panic bought a lot from them. Yeah, I've been seeing their posts on Facebook, and it is too bad when a smaller company like that goes out of business. The part I don't know if I'm loving is like this green edge. Like, is it too dark? Maybe it's too dark compared to my sample guy. Just make a slightly darker version of this one. Maybe that would be better. That is not slightly darker. That is slightly darker. That is lighter than in the picture. It's also not as green. That part I don't like. So that's like too dull. So how would I fix that? What an excellent question. Just remind myself that I keep not having enough paint, so I'm going to make that a bigger pool. I know some people, using much paint feels very wasteful to them, but I always forget. There's like 300 or 400 drops in here. So there's really like way more paint in there than you feel like there is. And I think your time and frustration level are also worth something. So I find it nicer for me if I mix a little more in the beginning and have some left over than if I do it the other way around. Chitter Squirrel, Crusaders, Overlords, Reptis, Reven, Nefsokar, Elves, Darkspawn, and Lupines. I cheated and was an old Black Lightning member though. 500 points for each, some in multiple flavors. Watching that blending is soothing my soul. I should slap some paint too. Yes, do it. Do it. If you haven't painted in a while, I definitely recommend painting. Especially if you just like watching colors. Like I had painted some things that were not super vibrant. So I've been itching to do something with more color. And this seemed like a good opportunity. But I think I was saying for a moment and then got distracted, as I will, that if there's something particular you'd like to see me do, feel free on a future show. Because I'm already kind of committed to this here. Feel free to let me know, and I will see what I can do. So I think what might be throwing me is that my sample cabbage is actually fairly light in some spots. So I'm going to pump up the volume on that lighter part. And it's kind of a coincidence, well, not a coincidence, it's kind of an accident. I didn't plan it, but it is, if I remember, I usually plan it, that I'm working on a back leaf, because if I don't love it, it's not kind of the primary angle. It would have even been better to probably work on this one. But when you're trying new mixes and you're not sure if stuff is looking amazing, it's good to try to do it on a more out of the way location that people aren't going to, focus a ton of attention on. So that if you do mess it up a little and you can't quite get it perfect, you did your learning on a part that doesn't matter as much. Yeah, I think that's probably better because you need contrast on miniatures. Even if it's the color contrast. I will still need some shading and highlighting contrast. And here I'll start try doing a bit of mixing the weird colors on the miniature and see how that goes. Start working in more of those pinks and purples and whatnot. But that may end up being something that I prefer doing through glazing. Wet blending is definitely, you don't have a lot of time to change your mind about stuff. And if you find that stressful, then that is why layering is great. Because you can, wet on dry, you can take a lot more time with making decisions and color variations and whatnot. Let's get a little bit of that creamy color over here. Then I will, I didn't fix all the edge. That. That and maybe goof around with the pink part after. So the white looks a little blown out on screen. I don't know if that's because the lighting is different or what. But I mean, that's not true white. It's definitely not that crazy. In person. Baba Took, a lot of the Reddit advice I see is you can do it cheaper if you spend 10 times the effort. Yeah. Time is money is one of the more true aphorisms in the world, and sometimes if you can afford it, it is worth the money, which Babatok would rather do. Even with a full paint club 3 days a week, it took us over a year to empty any paint bottles, and we started with half full bottles. Wow, okay, that's definitely a convincing argument for the people who are concerned. And paint doesn't last, if I put this miniature unpainted, if I put this miniature in my drawer and I don't paint it for 20 years, he's going to be fine. If I put this paint bottle in a drawer and I don't do anything with it for 20 years, it is not going to be fine. I'm overdue for it, but I run maintenance on all my paints every couple of years and check that there's enough water. And even though, these seem identical, okay, well, why don't I pick two with the same color? These seem identical, but these two caps could still have been produced in different production runs using different amounts of plastic in the bottles. And, for whatever reason, even though you'd say, well, all these paints, they're the same paints from the same company in the same bottles, they should all behave the same. And that's just, paint is just not nearly as uniform as we would like it to be. And that starts with the pigments, but then all kinds of other variables that we don't know. So I've had paint bottles that I didn't pay enough attention to, and some of them would be fine and others of them would be completely dried out. So using your paint is better than going to the shelf and finding out that it's become unusable through the forces of time. So why not use it up instead of losing it because it's worn out, is what I say. All right, I promised I was going to stop fussing with that leaf, and here I am not fulfilling my promise. So let's maybe look at this leaf, which is, you know, half of his face, essentially. Ah, see, there's some gray that I missed. I can tell because the paint is being applied. But that's okay. There will be other opportunities to put more paint on that. I can't tell if I'm staying in focus at all. I think my eyes are going wiggly. Which was another color thing I thought was interesting. So I don't know. I'm going to guess that this is probably true for a lot of people. My two eyes do not see color exactly the same. Like if I close one eye, like my left eye seems to see color more saturated than my right eye. My right eye in general just seems to be like a slacker. When they do the eye test, they can never seem to correct it as precisely as the left eye, which again, I'm guessing is a common thing. But those of you who also get glasses, feel free to comment and let me know if I am alone or not. And also, does anyone else find that like the most stressful test of your life? Like the eye, is it A or is it B? It's like, I don't know, and it's not like this question is going to affect my life for the next few years after I pick out my glasses or anything. No pressure. I find it very pressure. But I did go through that recently. And then I was worried that when my husband changed the light, I'm like, oh, is it super yellow because like the cataracts have come? But I did just have my eye exam, and she said the cataracts are still 1 out of 10, so I don't think it should be affecting my ability, you know, because they start making things look more yellow. Blue is the color apparently that people normally notice problems with first. But yes, so I have that, my two eyes see color slightly differently. And then I saw James Gurney, who's a great person to follow if you're interested in color and painting and stuff. He's the person who wrote Color and Light, which I bet if you watch Anne's show, she's talked about that book. But he recently posted something about exposure to red light, like exposing your eyes to red light. And he had red goggles, not red light. So I don't know if that counts the same. I want to read the original article. But exposing them to red light for just a short amount of time per week can improve your color perception by like up to 17%, which I thought was fascinating. And I definitely want to know more about that. Zachariah, the exceptions to the bottles that wore out were the primers, which got used by everyone frequently. And that would make sense. White and black would also be colors that I would expect to run out of more frequently. Because yeah, even for my own paints, when I'm replacing things for having run out, either it's a color that I use like just a butt ton of in a project, or it's the things I use all the time. Blue liner, gray primer, a couple other ones that I think I ended, you know, I don't use black to mix colors a lot, but I paint a decent amount of things black, so I had to replace some black as well. Megacom paint and takes would destroy the major colors in 2 days, says Chitter Squirrel. And yeah, paint and takes a slightly different thing, although even when So I used to volunteer a bit at the Gen Con paint and take thing back when I went to Gen Con. It's not that I don't volunteer anymore, it's that I don't go to Gen Con anymore. It's just too big. I can't handle it. And they usually had some paint left over. Now, were the bottles like a total disaster and stuff like that? Yes. Yes, they were. And paint takes will have some paint loss because if you're not watching kids, they will dispense just like that thing where I glooped out a bunch of paint. That would be a small amount to the average child. So if you have any kids stop by, you can start losing a lot of paint that way. These areas are, if this is a sphere, which it is, this part of the sphere is rolling away from the light, so it's going to be shadowed. So even if it's lighter from the way the leaf grows, it needs to be a little darker because of less light, which is like a little brain breaking, but how it is. I think Gen Con after a while got a family table where families could sit and where you knew that that's where the stuff that was destroyed might be. And when I've done my own, at smaller conventions, I've run paint and takes a little bit. I required that a parent sit with anyone under the age of 12 because I just cannot speak child very well. And hopefully said parent will make sure that they don't throw half a bottle of paint on their palette. Hopefully. I feel like I probably... See, that's not really the lip. I feel like the lip is more the inside part. Oh, all right, maybe it's got inner and outer lips, I guess. But I don't feel like I want to change the color too much on that part. I want to do more like emphasize the pink colors on the inside, more interior areas of the mouth, so that it draws more attention there. So I think I kind of want to treat this part as similar to the leaf edge at the top. I think is what I'm trying to say in the most convoluted way possible. And ditto for that part. I think that edge did not get my revised edge color. And I'm coolio with there still being like a very dramatic line there because this leaf would be casting a shadow on top of that leaf. That's usually what dark lining is where something that overlaps something else would be casting a shadow. Very realistic, despite people's belief that lining is not realistic. Alright, so I'm happy with those two leaves, I think. Zachariah confirms that white and black print out more frequently. Sugar Skull says, oh look, plate, palette, puddle, convention goer. Yes. Pendrake, no one ever tested my eyes to see which does color better. They've never tested it. I just tested it myself. So I'll find something that's very saturated color, like a poster or something, and close one eye and look at it with each eye. I don't think that... I don't know that our eye doctor's office has ever tested color at all, which is... I guess maybe they figure if you're colorblind by the time you're our age. We are often the youngest people at our eye doctors, which is saying something now because there's not a lot of places I go where I'm the youngest person in the room anymore. But I think they do so many cataract surgeries that they end up having an older population of patients. And we go there because there's a guy that's a retina specialist and my husband has retina problems. But I like our regular doctor too. Chitter Squirrel, priming the Harvest Golem Bones model, the one I plan to use as Gauntfield instead of the original Warlord model. So someone's doing some painting. Pendrake, I hate the eye test where they ask you to click a button if you see a random flicker on the inside of a big spherical lampshade thing. Oh, have I done that one? I don't know. Pendrake, likewise, I start getting impatient and clicking every time I imagine it. I probably have done that and I just don't remember. I find it amazing that there's a machine now that you can just put your face in front of it and it like figures out your prescription. I mean, obviously it's not super exact or they wouldn't still have you doing it the other way, but that it even gets in the ballpark. That's the one. Ours has a little hot air balloon in it and it'll whir and make other noises and then the hot air balloon comes in focus. Do these inside bits a little bit because that should be fun, right? So I'm adding a little more lightness. I think I had that darker color too far up. Of course, I need my cream color. And it's interesting, in my photo, it looks so yellowy, and it may be slightly more yellow than this. But when I started holding paints up to it, and I was like on my yellow shelf, and I would pull something down, and I go, oh, that seems like way more intense yellow than in my photo. So probably the other colors around it were making it look a little more yellow than it actually was. Yeah, this is definitely one of those cases where using like more of a pointillism, staggered brushstroke type thing is just gonna add the impression of, you know, how cabbage leaves have that bumpiness. And then some of the varieties, like, really bumpy and curly on the leaves, which I guess is another. Are they just decorative ones? I feel like there's one of the bumpy kinds that's for eating. I eat a lot of vegetables, but knowing the names of the vegetables is not really my strong area. I worked as a cashier when I was a teenager, and that was like one of the toughest parts. Like someone comes up and they've got like a basket of apples, and it's like, this is before they put little stickers on everything. And it's like, okay, which apple is it? I don't know. There's like 12 different kinds of apples. At least 3 of them look the same. So I just like take a guess. Plug that number in. We had the little PLU codes. They just weren't in stickers on the thing. We had a sheet up next to the cache. And you would just like memorize the ones with stuff like milk that came up all the time. In case anyone was wondering why I was saying that I'm rarely the youngest person in the room. And now you know. Our grocery store was like a neighborhood grocery store. They did have scanners then, but our grocery store did not have scanners. 40K Father says the test that Pendrake, the eye test that Pendrake and Zachariah were describing is the test for glaucoma. Well, don't get too impatient then. That sounds like an important test. You want to make sure that they're doing whatever they need to do. I just want to have like just a little bit of that liner thing here, but then also still get some of that transition on this leaf. So that should not at all be challenging and fun. But this reminds me of something I was thinking about recently. I think we talked about this in my last episode, a whole year ago when I last got to see you. Sometimes you change your mind, not the mini. Like you just decide to live with something instead of making yourself crazy trying to fix it. And I think that is a good philosophy for me to explore. There's a few more gray bits, so I may have some problems, but we'll see. I haven't done any of the pinky parts yet. Suspense. So this stuff, I'm working over it again, and it's safe because I can see all that shine and I know that everything's still wet there. So I'm not imperiling previous work. Little curly bit, which I have not fixed the other side of the leaf yet. But on things that have such a clear divide, you really can work on like half at a time and then come back at the other half. And then there's one more. Herozo really likes how this is turning out. Thank you. Yeah, I'm having fun with him. I don't know if I need to jump ahead to some of the pinky parts. So, for those who came in late, this is my inspiration cabbage. So I'm definitely going to use some of those kinds of colors on the mouth and probably this tail to kind of keep it more visually distinct from the other parts. But how much of that am I getting on the rest of the How many of these little veins am I going to do? Or am I going to decide that that's crazy? That's a good question. Let's see. Try it in a glazy way. And then I can take it back if I decide that it's too crazy. At least I think I could probably do that. Just trying to check the color a little. And I always like to test my glazes to make sure that they aren't too intensely colored. So I want them to be super transparent. And that, I mean, it's transparent, but I just kind of want like a hint of color, and that is much more than a hint. These ones are much more than a hint too. So I don't have a hint example right now. But I'm going to add just a little bit of brush on sealer. Which I don't have to, it thins down fine with water, but it's here. And like these colors that are separating a little, because I was mixing all the pinks and greens and the pigments don't always get along as well, I would probably want to use some medium in there. It's still a little intense. I always like to err on the side of too transparent, because there's lots of ways to fix that, where there's not lots of ways to fix the other thing. So I'm noticing that the spines, or the veins, I guess, the veins on my photo example cabbage, it does kind of look like some of that yellow color is in the middle. So doing it in a washier, glazier way kind of duplicates that effect. But what I don't have is, it's not dark enough to do those veins on the very bottom. So I'm just going to make a second little glaze. Maybe I should actually be using my very bright purple for that. I didn't thin that one as much because I know that Carnival Purple was pretty transparent from the beginning, where this other color had more white in it, so it was less transparent. But I think I will bump it up just a little. The trick will be making sure that this looks like I meant it and not like I'm making terrible, terrible mistakes. So I might have to do some stuff around the edges or something once this dries. I don't know. Like that looks like a mistake because there wasn't really a ridge there. So, I don't know. I don't know if I like the effect, but it's not done. So, who knows? Maybe I need to add just a little, kind of have some kind of have, like it radiates out from the center a little. And then we get the edges. Yeah, I think that helps. It didn't look natural being just the vein. Need a bit of a transition. Yep, that does the trick. I don't think the other one's dry yet though, so I'm not gonna add the kind of halo effect just yet. And this is the kind of thing where I was talking about, you know, if I'm trying to work something out, I'll grab a practice miniature that I won't bother to prep very much. Looking for some similar characteristic. Well, that's proof of concept. I'll go back to working on the leaves a bit more. It might be that I would need to use more of this one for some of these spots. It is getting more light. This is one of those things that you can make it look more and more natural the more you're willing to futz around with stuff like that. Kind of have layers and glazes and all that good stuff. Because natural things, you know, unlike a sweater or something, are not really like super uniform in color as a rule. Which I did some stuff like that on the donkey that I was showing earlier. And I guess if things are kept like 2 or 3 months, that episode is still on here somewhere too. I did the process somewhat differently there because there wasn't... there were some color transitions, but there weren't as many. So what I was trying to do is take something that this is all gray and make it less boring gray. So I painted like a straight coat of gray and then came in with some of my other colors. Well, the paint was still wet and kind of put it on and did this sort of blending, but with colors that were not quite as intense, I guess. Still more intense than people would probably often do for a gray donkey. But because they were kind of wet blending and mixing in, and then I did highlighting on top of it, it all gelled together while still leaving more visual interest. But you don't have to make up ways to have visual interest with a cool cabbage. It's baked in. I just want to do the inside of this while I'm holding it in this orientation. Yeah, for whatever reason, I guess these two pigments don't completely get along. They make cool colors, but then they want to separate. But, I mean, that just means I need to stir the paint on my palette now and then. It's not the end of the world. I feel like I need more of that brighter color. There's just enough of that leaf poking up. I think that's how it works. But I'm not gonna worry about back there as much. It's like not the main area of interest for Mr. Cabbage Man. Just for fun, we'll put some of this brighter color in there. Do I remember which color that was to get some more of it out? What an excellent question. I think it'll make the face more interesting if I switch the kind of lip leaf to being a bit more of the pink. Alright, what did I have? I have Witchcraft Purple. That sounds like it. Well, maybe not. What else did I have? Well, that was what I had. Interesting. I must have mixed that a little and then forgotten. That sounds like something I would do. But do I want it to be too dulled down? Maybe not. Since that is his mouth area. That purple is Carnival Purple. Unless I'm forgetting that as well. And maybe I want a nicer brush for this part. I think my poor brush is feeling the dry winter air a little bit. Those kind of, magenta-y colors tend to not be the most opaque, so it's definitely going to have more than one pass. But out of curiosity, I'm going to put this light color on the teeth and see if that seems like it's going to work. Yeah, they're going to need like a wash or something. But this is just sort of general concepting. And I think that will stand out nicely. How does this guy see? No idea. If he's magic, he sees with magic, I guess. Because what this is a size 2, and you're going to want a size 1. Or whatever that is. No, because it's the same. That is not smaller. It is the same. We'll try that. He sees with his chloro kill, obviously. He does seem very motivated to want to chew on your face. And that is very much on his to-do list. Seems like that brighter green got lost a little, and I think the yellowy touch that it adds is important, how these colors play together. Because the yellow, or creamy color, the light color didn't have that much yellow in it, but kind of where the lighter green meets it had more yellow. So I was checking kind of what I did over here, but I'm not really too fussed about, you know, the way the colors are matching on both sides of the leaf. First of all, a lot of things don't work like that. And second of all, no one can look at both sides of those things at the same time, so they're not going to call me on it if I don't match. Yeah, I guess if I put up pictures, that would be a way to look at both sides at the same time. But for most practical purposes, we sometimes get hung up and spend a lot of time on stuff like that when we're painting, instead of thinking about, well, no one can really see this, or if they see this, they're probably not going to like think about it as hard as I'm thinking about it. Me at least, I created a lot of extra work for myself. So I'm trying to get better about that. Because that seems like a thing I should do less of. Oh, the one thing I think is nice about miniatures, if you are a person who makes New Year's resolutions, which I'm kind of the opinion that New Year's is just a made-up date, and you can make decisions to try to improve your life at any time, and you don't have to feel like you have to, you know, if you're not feeling it right now, then that's fine. Just wait until April or June or whenever you are feeling it, and then make some improvements in your life. There's no like law or whatever. We've attached an artificial significance to this whole New Year's thing. It's just a calendar page. But anyway, if you are someone who likes to do it, I think the nice thing about miniatures is that where most resolutions are kind of less, like eat less, drink less, be less dumb about money, stuff like that. Miniatures, you can make a bunch of more, paint more, use more colors, use more different colors, share my hobby more, play more. There's lots of nice, fun, more resolutions that we can make with miniatures. And our other positive hobbies I'm on, play more. That's a good one too. Cabbage greens differently depending on the sun. Oh, thank you, Chitter Squirrel. That's an interesting factoid. I know some other things are like that as well. Well, don't you have stuff like snake eggs, whether the egg develops as male or female can depend on how warm, like what section of the, I don't think they call it a nest, but wherever the snake is laying the eggs. Or one of the reasons when they try to clone cats, it doesn't always, the result of the clones don't always look the same as the original, because that temperature thing and where the cat is, the kittens are in the womb of the mother cat affects what the coat color looks like. I mean, not that I think people, there's a lot of pets out there that need some love. I think we don't need to clone pets. We need to help out pets that are already here. But that is just me. I mean, I get how you could be so fond of an animal friend, but I know enough about genetics to know that you're not going to get, how they were raised and the life they had. All of that makes a big difference too. Like my first cat that I had, she was an awesome lovey-dove cat when I got her, so I don't know, if she were cloned, there's no guarantee that she would have turned into that same kind of love monster cat. She probably would be able to yell as well as she did, because that's, voice box is probably more of a physically determined element. Pendrake has no animal friends at the moment. But when you get one, you're not going to clone, right? You're going to get one from scratch, as it were, I guess. Well, and I've been wrestling about whether or how to say this on stream. But we had to say goodbye to Ella before Christmas. She got very sick. And that was tough, and I know you've seen her on stream, so I kind of feel like I had to explain why you won't be seeing her on stream anymore. And then you don't see Corbin on stream because he's too heavy for me to lift up. But we are talking about whether or how to add to our little cat family, I guess. We know we want to do it, and I'm pretty sure I've never had the experience of cats who like each other. I see people post these pictures and their cats are all loving on each other. Oh, thanks, guys. It is hard saying goodbye. it was even harder than I thought it was going to be, actually. Kind of had a couple weeks there where I was a bit of a basket case. And I thought I was going to ruin my sinuses for life. But she was a good baby, and I think she had a pretty good life, even though it got cold sometimes and she didn't like that. But apart from that, she was pretty happy. But when we add to our cat family, I think I'd like to adopt a bonded pair of cats. First of all, they're harder to adopt out, but also then we would know cats like each other and not have to hope, because that's never worked out for me. And we think Corbin would, I mean, he always seemed like he wanted to be friendlier with the other two than they wanted to be friendly with him. He was very, I mean, sometimes he would play with Ella too roughly, but then other times he would just kind of come up to her and very nicely groom her, and he would always, go for the back of the head spots where they can't reach themselves, and she'd put up with it for like 10 minutes and then be like, no, we're done with that. It's like he's doing you a favor. So, and I was sad enough to have already looked at some of the pet adoption things, but so they say you shouldn't, you should give the surviving pet a little while, because we all know how much cats love change, to get used to that change. But he just seems so bored. Like, the humans are boring, and he doesn't have enough to do during the day monitoring us, like he's missing checking the smells or whatever of the other animals. So sometimes I feel like we should do it sooner than later for his benefit. But we're kind of like, okay, what would the level of destruction be? Because it's, once you have had a cat for a while, and then okay, they're gonna climb on this kind of thing, and they're not gonna do this other kind of thing. So it's okay if I store whatever this is over there, but I shouldn't, put things in that place. And it's like, do I have to take down and wrap up everything that's breakable? Because there's very, very many things in our house, and I kind of feel like, yes, maybe I do have to do that. But then I'm perversely tempted to leave the Christmas tree up, because Ella used to, she was much younger then, but she would climb about halfway up the tree and then just hang out there. So she didn't really destroy it a lot. She would knock some decorations off the bottom tiers to play with. And I mean, I've had cats my whole adult life, so my Christmas tree is largely designed to accommodate the fact that a cat is going to want to go bananas on it. And most of our decorations are not breakable. They're like stuffed animal fabric type things or plastic. And I have a very small selection that I'll put on the top third, or just the crown of the tree even. So I'm kind of tempted to leave our tree up until we get some new cat friends and I can enjoy them destroying our tree, which just seems deranged. But when you're sad, I guess you remember. It's weird how I'm remembering things that she did that were annoying, and I'm missing those. But I guess that's kind of how grief works. It's like, please come back and destroy the tree. Corbin is our only cat now, yes. He's 20 pounds of cat, so if you want to kind of count him as two cats, an argument could be made. Kyle Larson, I don't know if it works the same, but you could talk to your local cat rescue. The rabbit one here does introduction dates so the animals can meet in a neutral place and see if they will get along. The animal shelter, the city animal shelter, said something about having introduction dates The cats I ended up looking at are from a feral cat rescue. I'm going to contact them and see what their deal is. But I mean, cats are just like, it can take them 6 months to get used to something. So one day, we certainly did learn that Archer didn't like kittens in one day. We ended up doing it anyway, but his initial reaction to meeting a kitten was demon noises, basically. And the person who had the kitten became very disinterested in us adopting the kitten. It's like, well, he's a cat. He'll get over it. We'll keep them separated until we know that he's like not totally deranged. But she just like took her kitten and ran. And was like, okay, well, we'll try again another time. And then we ended up having a friend. Our friend found Ella, like in a gas station, I think, and she'd been bitten by a fly, so she had this like wound where the fly larva was. So his family took her in and got her like all this treatment and stuff, but then they already had like a decent number of cats and dogs, so they were like, we don't want to keep this cat like forever. And we had been looking, so we're like, okay, well, we will take that cat. Feral adoptions tend to be a lot more likely to not mind others. It'll usually be the already pet that has issue with others since they aren't used to living in a colony. But Corbin kind of is, because when we got him, we already had 2 cats, and he seemed to respect the, I wasn't the first one here, I'm lower in the hierarchy. Even though he was always bigger and stronger than them, he always seemed to respect that idea. And the 2 were the pair I was looking at. There is a pair of orange females, and I'm like, okay, all orange might be like a lot. Might be too much cat for us. But the other pair I was looking at, they were bottle fed, so they're affectionate with people, they're affectionate with each other, and then they've grown up in the foster cat carer's home, so they're familiar with cats. So I figure they should be a pretty good pair, and then even if he doesn't like them, they have each other, so they would hopefully not harass him too much, because he has decided that naps are pretty cool. But then when he is awake, he tells us about how bored he is. So I'm pretty happy with how this cabbage guy is turning out. I did not make it in one stream. I don't know, hands up if you're surprised by that. There are no hands. I know I can't see you, but I still know there are no hands up. Because if you've been here before, you know that I always paint slower than I think I'm going to. But it was fun to play with some colors. It was fun to see some colors and play with. I'd like, there's no brown here. I love it. I kind of have spent a lot of time with brown painting lately. So I don't know that I'll continue with this guy next week. I'll try to mix it up a little bit. Green Users loves Cabbage Guy. Thank you. It was fun. It was fun to play with the colors, and definitely gonna have to add it's interesting how just adding that little hint of pink around it makes it look so more natural than just I don't know if you can tell on camera. But to me, to my eye, it gives it kind of that slightly translucent quality that a cabbage leaf can have too. So that is interesting. I did not expect that. But that's where, adding some color complexity and doing glazes and layering can help you make things look a lot more natural. Anyway, I'm going to turn off the light and switch over to this view to say goodbye. Then I guess I'll move the light. Here we are in the yellow now. Now you're in the yellow. No Bones 5 Rockmen next week. Did I say I was going to do Bones 5 Rockmen? Am I missing something I said I was going to do? I have an idea for what to do next week. We're not going to go beyond the kit. We're going to go back to the kit. I'm definitely doing a back to the kit. The Boulderkin. Did those just release? Is that why you're? Oh, joke about brown. They're not. I painted them gray with some browns, but it was like interesting gray, like the donkey a little bit. I have actually been meaning to. So for Bones 5, there was a Learn to Paint kit, and I painted that guy was the one I used as the example guy. instead of the skeleton that's in the retail kit. And I think I kind of had fun with him, and he was a cool one, and I wish that he could be the one that people get in the kit, but for various reasons he cannot be. So I might paint him sometime if they're out. I don't know that they're. Well, okay, maybe I give up on whether things are out or not, because I look through my bins, and I'm like, oh, this guy looks fun to paint, and like the cabbage guy, and then I go look it up, and I'm like, no, he's not out. But there are carnivorous plants and other types of monsters that you could do that same color thing with. Anything with tentacles, you could do what I just did there, and it'd be cool. But yes, so I think next week we will go back to the kit, and I'm going to be cryptic and not say anything more about that. But now I'm sure that Quindy will be able to find us somebody else doing hobby things and having fun. So I'll let her pick a raid before I sign off all the way. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for all the questions and comments and information. I think this was a good, lively session. I learned stuff. Hopefully you learned stuff. Oh, I thought I saw Quindy putting up the rate, but it was links to where you can read me drone on instead of listening to me drone on, and then the Reaper Discord. Reaper says there are a ton of people on, and I can't see the numbers, but I'm glad to hear that. I mean, maybe if I move my windows around I could, but I'm not as technical as I should be for all of this. We are going to raid Samson Arts, and I hope that you'll say hi, spread the Reaper love, and I'll see you here next week for Back to the Kit instead of Beyond the Kit. Bye, everybody.